Grace Gift Herbal Clinic. Aye bio. Intimate to me anyem.
Grace Gift Herbal Clinic dear. Sanya ya kra na ka se ya ready for entafo a. Anke nu ankode ma wo no. Anko amoa nyimienu ni mensa kra na ka gugu yam. Abo de wote te kra o.
We yi ya na fiance nkruma.
Asem da kobosu.
Na me no ko dai. Oma wedro hwe se wo niam yaye. Heavy said Grace Gift Herbal Clinic.
Dr. Grace Bodui na nimu tie na se professional nurse ya wonye suahunu saa ma wono abebie ne herbal clinic wo ya afo ho da je na nimu bo so boko ense won mo ma wawo ya debiti se ulcer, malaria, typhoid, BP, diabetes, stroke, hypertension de keka ho no de. Grace Gift Herbal Clinic ayen mfitire kura wo Kumasi Ohwim School Junction.
Aya phone friend na won ko hwe 0246 518 003 and 0206 812 558.
Grace Gift Herbal Clinic. Be any how bio.
Emrena so say e was Zionfelix. Metina say na mepe oba a wobobra e wo achazefo asasi so na yetina se na yednesi wo na ye dissect no bisect no ehun ekwan a ofa so eye ne nyuma se na be ya yeso so no yenyi the same thing there e be fa 1 or 2 or 3 things they are kind there no ho yeso etimi akwanim e wo eye obra na ye bonim me dey Zionfelix na any conversation I'm sure you will enjoy it as like I say enko ema tap send it wherever you are in Europe, UK, Belgium, Italy, Holland, France, Germany, Spain. If you want to send money to Ghana, then make a choice say use the tap send. Send a ebusha for omombre whenever they are receiving money from you. Now also know with me sending money from the comfort of your home office. Maybe I will be with me send this card at the ebusha. It is just an app. Just download it. If you don't have it, go to Google Play Store or iOS App Store. Download it. Now already start for the very first time. I use the code Zionfelix. We'll be £5. So we Europe and our other countries not spending euros now. You get €5 that you send to family and friends here in Ghana. Now we want to do Accra, we want to Accra, we pacho for ni ekopium ewo Grace Gift Herbal Clinic. Dr. Grace Bodu or Tony Boase whenever I say or share patients Tony Boase no gusa question just to understand idea how when you a drew at me at the amount. When you Ghana cry, don't worry. She's on WhatsApp. You can call her on phone. Open your time at the amount. Send a beya a bit to me at all. I'll be right back. Eba now, my Rev Akua Ofori, but I didn't come on. Don't forget to follow me on all the social media platforms. Zionfelix.com on Instagram, Twitter, on _Zionfelix. If you go on Facebook, it is Zionfelix Entertainment News.
Ago, adofo me chiamo. It is saying. Me did the mama say wa na me wasem de be catcher. What a tap sending ka. Debbie. What's it say? Na wo she he. Mama can share way. Tap send app a betimi atwe agu phone so. Na wo baby a wo Europe a wotimi send sika ko Ghana e koma wa adofo ententem hona. Na se wo mo sika no so mo MTN so Vodafone Tigo ana se Airtel so a omo benya sika ne tentam hona na de wo mu kra ne se fees bia anka ho untua fees bia and exchange rate no so was so kama or iPhone ana se wo Android that de obeya ne se obekọ App Store no na wa hwehwe tap send chale me say menye ja ho me say tapo na send ah. Me catch you say me kwaba na mafa Rev Akua Ofori Boatin atina say na yahwe no from head to toe ya dissect no na bie ni mu ye hu ekwan a ye form no a wetimi abedru ha na Zionfelix menya akonya abetena nimi. Download Dash app on your phone na ebebo am WhatsApp niska e Ghana here Dash app. Whenever you are sending money to somebody, I also use Dash app. It is very affordable, 90% cheaper than our more competitors. But when you're sending money to people in Kenya, you can send money to your bank from Dash app. You can also pay your bills with Dash app. My dear Zionfelix, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for
allowing me to come and talk to you.
Zion, thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. First of all, why short hair? Because you know most ladies want to be wearing Brazilian wig. There's a new one. I've forgotten the name. Charlotte say made it popular recently. I mean, after the election, I've forgotten the name. Bone straight hair and all those. I mean, 10,000 cities. I mean, people who are rich go for 10,000 cities a week. So why short hair?
I've just always had short hair. So when I was in university, I used to keep my hair long. And when I went to university in the US, I went to get my hair done. And they told me when I was done that it was $50.
Wow.
Exactly.
For hair?
For hair.
Okay.
So I paid the $50. Then I went to Walmart and I found a pair of Tiwa clippers for $30. So I bought them and I cut my hair.
Okay.
And that's been it.
Oh.
I've kept it short, it's simple, it's easy. Of course, all hairs are beautiful. Yeah. But for me, this has always worked.
So, is it because of the 50? Can we say because of the $50? That's why you are.
At that time, it was because of the $50. But when I cut it and I looked at myself, I thought, oh, that's nice. So I just kept it, and it's worked.
You wanted to manage money.
At the time, yes.
Oh, okay. So, would you advise somebody who spends like 5,000 cities on a week to also go that lane?
I think at the end of the day, how you keep your hair speaks to how you feel about yourself.
Okay.
And so whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel confident, whatever places you in a position to be able to influence other people positively, if that's what it's going to cost, then it's worth the investment. So it's not about what it costs, it's really about the value it adds to you and how you can use that value to benefit other people.
So today we're coming to, as I said earlier, bisect who you really are and then how far you've come in life for many other people, not just the younger ones. And we have people who are even older than you that would also learn something from you. And I'm very happy that you've allowed yourself to be a blessing unto people. Reverend.
Yes.
You are a minister of the gospel.
Yes, please.
Why are you not a full-time minister of the gospel, but doing so many other things aside that?
So it's interesting you should say that. You know, a full-time minister, when you talk about a full-time minister, it implies that if you're a minister and you are doing something else, that you're a part-time minister. But it's not really true. When you're a minister of the gospel, you do all the things that everybody else does. So you perform weddings, you know, all the sacraments of the church. So weddings, not funerals, but you do funerals.
You do funerals, yeah.
Weddings, you get involved in baptisms, you are constantly giving sick communion, you're ministering to people. So I chose to go into what you call tent ministry. So Paul was what you call a tent minister. So Paul worked, although he was also ministering the gospel to people. Because I'm trained as a mechanical engineer, I was working as an engineer, and I felt called into ministry through a series of things which I've documented in my book. And by the time I came to the point where it was clear that I needed to become a priest, I realized that it was possible. The Anglican Church allowed people to remain in their work and also to be priests. And I felt as though there are different types of ministry. And for me, I think it's really important, and what I'm trying to project is the fact that you go into ministry doesn't mean that you leave what we like to call the secular world, you know, because sometimes we create the impression that if you follow God, if you serve God, that somehow everything else is evil, that if you're a lawyer, you can't be a lawyer and be a priest at the same time, as if to imply that God is no longer a part of law, God is no longer a part of anything that is not in the church. And I think people like myself and other tent ministers, or if you want to call them part-time ministers or worker priests, demonstrate the fact that God is in the secular and in the religious, because you have a person who everybody accepts is a religious person working in the secular world. So God has not abandoned any part of the world. He's in all of it.
I mean, for the want of better words, as you've already started describing it as secular world, I mean, there are lots of, let's say, evil things that do happen there. I mean, corruption. I mean, you might go to a board meeting, somebody might say something. I mean, you are human. You get angry. People will start using some certain words that, I mean, which is against the religion. I mean, I think that is why most people believe that if you're a man of God, you should stick to that so that you don't involve yourself in other things which will dent your image as a minister of the gospel.
But if you look at this, at scripture, you look at the life of our Lord Jesus Christ, that was always the big criticism against him, was that how could a man of God, how could a man of the cloth be with tax collectors and prostitutes and so on? But you see, who was always asking those questions? It was the Pharisees. So you can see that the life of a true Christian is not one who is away from the people who need Christ. The true Christian does what Christ does. And Christ was with the people. Christ was dealing with the challenges, the issues, the grief, the sorrow, the sin, and consistently explaining to people the work of God. And that, in my view, is the true work of the Christian. And it's not just the priest. Any Christian and every Christian is supposed to be out in the field, wherever they are, whatever corner they are in, speaking to people about what it is, or demonstrating to people what it is that God expects, so that God is infiltrated into everything that we do. And it's not as if, oh, there's a place for holy people and there's a place for evil people. It shouldn't be that way. We are all children of God.
So since we've started with the religion, or we are talking about religion, let's finish that whole conversation before we come back to the foundation of our conversation. So in the Christendom,
Yes.
it looks like we have so many angles of Christianity. Somebody is the hand, other side they're the leg. We don't wear wig, we don't do this, we don't do this. How, I don't know how the Anglican operates. I know much about the Romans, because I attended a Catholic school. How does the Anglican Church work?
When you say how does the Anglican Church work, there are a variety of things, if you could narrow that down a bit.
When it comes to the worship.
To worship.
Yeah, because Catholics don't marry. I mean, the priest, the father, they don't marry.
Sure.
And then the Roman sisters also don't marry.
Yes.
How does the Anglican Church?
Within the Anglican Church, the priests do marry, and we do ordain women as well. So that's how come I'm a priest. But if you walked into an Anglican church as somebody who was trained as a Catholic, you would notice very few differences. The Mass is essentially the same thing. If you recall the history of the church, the Anglican Church came out of the Catholic Church. And it came out of it just based on a minor disagreement between the king and the Pope. And so when the King of England started the Church of England, he essentially just took the Catholic Church, changed a few things, and basically it's the same. A lot of our doctrines are exactly the same. The form of worship is the same. The things we say and do are the same. But again, we must focus on scripture, because sometimes we get so caught up in forms and type of worship that we miss the essence of what our faith is about. And our faith really resides on the fact that Christ died, Christ rose, and Christ will come again.
Still on the church, Anglicans do marry, as you just said.
Yes.
And you came out of the Catholic. So why do you marry, but the people that you came out from them don't marry? That's the Catholics.
That was the basis of the conflict and the split between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church. So the king was married to a woman who could not bear children, King Henry, and he wanted to have children. So he went and asked the Pope if he could divorce his wife and have a child, and have married somebody else so he can have a child. And the Pope said no, because divorce is not allowed. And so essentially, King Henry ultimately started his own church, the Church of England, where divorce was allowed under specific circumstances. And also, as part of that, the priests were allowed to marry and so on. So really, the deviation in the doctrine is minor. Again, the focus is on scripture.
So is divorce allowed aside what the Bible says when somebody cheats on you? As you just said, I mean, in special cases, I mean, is it allowed?
So divorce is allowed. Divorce is not encouraged. We do everything possible to try and prevent a couple from getting divorced. But again, it also speaks to a lot of what I talk about in my book and in my ministry, is that divorce for me is a symptom. It's like your petrol light coming on. The problem is that there's no petrol in the tank. And most of the time, divorces start because the foundation of the marriage is wrong. Most of our young people marry for completely the wrong reasons. We marry for money, we marry for companionship, we marry because we're under pressure, we marry because we are looking for financial stability, and all these things, the moment any of those things fall away, then you suddenly find yourself in a position where you are no longer interested in the marriage. But marriage is a sacrament. Marriage is a ministry. Marriage is supposed to represent the relationship between Christ and his church. So it's not something to be stepped into lightly. And this is part of what we as a church need to work with our young people on, to make sure that the walk into marriage is guided and is done sensibly.
If I am asking questions about religion, I mean, the whole conversation will be about religion, because in recent times, most people have so many questions about religion. They've been saying a whole lot of things about religion, that even what we were taught when we were growing up, some of them, so many question marks. So, I mean, let's just go back to the foundation of the conversation. You said you are engineer, you're also a minister of the gospel, and what else has God blessed you with?
So, school-wise, my first degree is in physics. I was looking to go to medical school.
Whoa.
And so I did a first degree in physics, and then I realized that medical school was not my thing. And that's a lot of why I've become the way I've become now, with a focus on helping people find their passion. Because I was searching so much for what it is that I thought would make me happy. So I left the medical course, went into mechanical engineering. That was interesting for a while. I did an MBA, and then I started working for Procter & Gamble. I worked for Cummins, and then I came to Ghana and I worked for Bost as the general manager. Currently, I'm the director of programs for the Anglican Diocese of Accra. Okay. So I work directly with the bishop to help him with all his programs. I also sit on the advisory committee for the United States Trade Advisory Committee on Africa. So to advise the United States president on how to trade.
The current president?
The current president, yes.
That's a big deal. How did you get there?
So again, it comes down to, I believe, just making sure that everything you do it properly. It's one of the conversations that I'm always having with young people. So one of the members of the United States Embassy is a member of my church.
In Ghana here?
In Ghana here. And, I always go to church. I'm very diligent about making sure that I do my masses. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. So one day he called me aside and he said, look, I've been watching you and I really like the way you're so diligent about getting everything done and being on time and making sure we close on time. And there's a position that is open with the United States government. They're looking for a young African who can help them advise on how to trade in Africa. And a lot of the people are people who have Africa experience, but they tend not to sit on the continent. And so now they're trying to change the strategy and have people who sit on the continent. So I said, well, I wasn't sure if I had the experience. He said, well, let me see your CV. I sent him my CV. He said, look, you have all the experience you need. I think you should put in an application. And so I did. About 6 months later, I got a call from the White House, got a call from the FBI. All kinds of people were running around trying to figure out who I was and what was going on in my life. I was called into the US Embassy. I had to answer a 60-page document on who I am. They interviewed people in Ghana, people in America who I knew. And eventually I was given the nod. And so I've been on the committee for the last 3 years. It's a 4-year term, renewable term. So I started out under Donald Trump's presidency, and then now I'm still serving on the committee under Biden's presidency.
How was the feeling when you first had a call?
It was incredible. The lady was very excited. She said, I'm calling from the White House. And I kept thinking, which White House? They
say White House.
They say White House. I'm like, hey, this is Ghana, And she says, yeah, I'm calling from the White House. You put in an application. We're so excited to have you. We've seen your CV. We see that you're an Anglican priest. And they were really excited. So I went to the US. I met with them. We did the swearing-in ceremony. And it's been really amazing, the exposure. There are people from all over the world who sit on the committee. Of course, most of our meetings now are by Zoom. But when I first started, I'd meet these people in person. You've got people who sit on boards in Microsoft and so on. So the exposure has been absolutely amazing, but it's also shown me that a lot of times as young people in this part of the world, we often don't get to see what is really happening in the world. We are so caught up in our Ghana here that when you have the opportunity to see how boards and the thinking of the rest of the world, it really opens up your mind and helps you to understand how we need to position ourselves if we really want to have an impact and be listened to as Africans, young Africans coming up.
How do we position ourselves, by the people we work with or by the places that we go?
It's a mindset thing. We need to move out of just looking at Ghana. You know, because sometimes when we do things, you know, we have an attitude of, let's just do it anyhow. After all, you know, it's like, we are just in Ghana. But everything that we tackle, we must tackle it at a world-class level, so that, you know, the show you are doing, for instance, your mindset shouldn't be that this is Ghana. At all times, we should think about, if I'm sending this out to the world, the whole world is going to look at this. Is this quality good enough? Is the way I speak good enough? Is the way I dress good enough? Is the way I've handled this situation good enough for the globe? When we start thinking like that as young people, in this country, people may tease us, but at the end of the day, that is how we get opportunity. That is how we get recognized, because the kids in China, the kids in India, they're not just thinking about China and India. They're thinking about the whole globe. So why are the kids in Ghana thinking about just Ghana?
So some of them do complain that, the system, if you think outside the box, the equipment, the things that you even need to work, it's not there for you to use them.
To a certain extent, but you know, if we look at Ghana, one of the best medical doctors, set of doctors globally, are Ghanaians. And yet we don't have the equipment, but it's because we've been trained to understand that whether or not you have the equipment, you need to be able to tackle a disease, and any disease, when it hits you. We are at a different time where the world is opened up to us. When I was younger, if I wanted to do a research paper, I had to go and take my father's Encyclopedia Britannica and open it and look inside. Now there's Google, there's YouTube, there are so many things. You know, if we want to know today what is happening in Ireland, we just need to look. We can read an Irish newspaper right now. We can find out what's happening in Bhutan right now. The world literally is in our palm. But for some reason, as young Ghanaians, we are still very focused on what is happening in just this one little corner, forgetting that we can access anybody and anyone. The moment you put something on Facebook or YouTube, it's no longer just a stage where you are seeing 100 people or even 1,000 people or even 10,000 people. The internet provides a global stage, a truly global stage. And if consistently you put out content which is good quality, it is spell checked, it is intelligently thought through, we will catch the attention of the globe. So yes, in a certain context, we don't have what we need. But I think once you have a smartphone, you pretty much have everything you need to make a difference in the world as we have it today.
Now, so the people who have graduated from the uni, or people who have the technical know-how, and then they're not getting the platform. I mean, somebody might have applied to companies for like 5 years. I mean, I interviewed your very good friend Tyree, Mrs. Tyree Bennis, and then after her conversation, I mean, somebody sent me his CV. He's been applying for jobs for like 5 years, and he's not getting it. So how would such a person even get the opportunity?
I'll tell you a story. There's a young man who came to me, exact same situation. He'd been sitting at home for 5 years. And I said, look, I can show you how to get a job, but it takes work. I said, every day, from Monday to Friday, wake up in the morning. By 7 o'clock, you should have had your breakfast. By 8 o'clock, you should be fully dressed like you are going to work. Sit at your desk and start applying for jobs. Every day, at a minimum, put in an actual application for 10 jobs. An actual application. To put in an application for 10 jobs, you need to look at about 100 jobs. If you do that, at the end of every week, you'd have put in an application for 50 jobs. By all means, somebody will call you. He got a call. It was for a job with one of the ministries, but they were not going to pay him. So he comes to me, he's like, I've gone to university and they don't want. And I said, you know what? You don't know anything. Having graduated from university, you actually don't know anything. Not enough to work a job. Because whatever job you get, they are now going to train you on how to do the job. So I said, if somebody has asked you to even walk into their office, walk in there and work for free. So he starts complaining about, if I go and I have to work for free, my transport. I was like, you will find a way. So he comes back after the first day and he says, they didn't even have a place for me to sit. And I said, did they have a place for you to stand? He said, yes. I said, okay, so stand there. So he starts this job at the ministry and he started doing photocopies. And I said, what are you doing with the photocopies you are photocopying? He says, well, you know, some of it is about environment stuff. I find it interesting. I said, so read it. You know, learn about it. Go and ask the person who asked you to do the photocopy if you can help them with something else. So he started doing that. Then after a while, the head of the department called him and said, you know, I noticed that you're always here. You don't seem to have a place to sit, but you always work diligently. You get your work done. So would you like to join my department? So he says, okay. He joins her department for a small stipend, and her department has to go and do some work with KPMG. So they take him along, you know, because he's a photocopy boy. Yeah. So he goes along, and every once in a while they say something, and he's like, oh, I know about this. So he makes a contribution. Yeah. The people at KPMG noticed him and offered him a job. Today he's a big man at KPMG. And I've talked to his name is William Amugi, Takia boy. And you know, William always talks about the fact that he was sitting at home convinced that the system is preventing him from getting a job. And now he's of the view that he just wasn't stepping forward. You know, we can't always expect a paycheck for everything. Sometimes we just need to volunteer. Sometimes we need to offer ourselves. And that is where the reward will come. But if we're going to take the mindset that I have a degree and therefore I must be paid to do something, nothing is going to come our way. The kids out in the US and other places, they volunteer constantly to get the work experience so that they can put it on their CV and say, I have done this. There are several stories like this. I know a lady who runs a cake company now, and it's because she was unemployed. And so she said, you know what, I'm going to learn how to make cake. She went on YouTube and started making cakes. It was just for fun. And then, you know, she'd give it to this person, that person. And over time, it has built up into an organization. Each of us has something deposited in us that we can offer to the world. But it's up to us to put it out there for the world to see.
Let's look at how Reverend also made it up to this time. I mean, growing up, where did you grow up, education? I know you went to the States, so where did you start and you left us to the States? How many kids, family?
So I was rather fortunate. It's my brother and I went to Ghana International School.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that means like you were born into a rich home.
No, I wasn't born into.
Because GIS, I mean, you know.
Not necessarily. GIS is it's a good school, and the GIS allows you to get a good education. So I agree that I am a privileged kid. I was a privileged kid, but it doesn't mean that it was easy, and it doesn't mean that I didn't have to apply myself. When I went to the US, I struggled a lot with school fees and so on, just simply because it's a lot more expensive in the US. But again, my parents were paid for it and got me through. But I also worked for free a lot. My first few jobs were free because that's how you do internships for free, and that's how you get work experience so that you can now go to a company and say that, look, I've been able to do a little bit of work here, and so this is what I'm able to offer. I was fortunate. I applied for a job at Procter & Gamble. I got the job. I worked with them for a bit. And then when I finished my master's degree, I went to Cummins and started working there as an engineer. But again, it's all about putting yourself out there, being diligent and working hard, and not being so focused on pursuing money, but rather pursuing excellence and offering quality and value to to the place that you are going to.
One thing that I've learned right now from the start of a conversation till now is working for free. I mean, it is not always the case that you have to expect money for what you do, because she gave an example of where somebody worked for free from the beginning, and now he is a big man at KPMG, and that's what she also started with. In a free, and you get the technical skills, you get the knowledge about it, and then you become experts in that area. Then people will be paying huge sums for your money. So let's look at, as a young girl, a privileged girl, there's some people that say, oh, my papa will scam, my mom will scam. So I mean, my new company, at least, say your company, I'll get a property. I'll become the boss of his or a company. So let me just do what I can do. Why didn't you think like that, but decided to work extra harder? I mean, learn to go to the States and acquire more skills and become a better person for yourself instead of relying on your parents' assets?
I think one of the first things is the way I was brought up. My father always made it very clear to us that what he has is for him.
Parents, don't you?
He said what he has is for him, it's not for us. So everybody should plan to work and get their own as well. So right from the beginning, that was instilled in me. But also, I think going to the US it really exposed me to the fact that even the really privileged people in the US, they were expected to work. Even if it was in their parents' company, they were expected to work, and they didn't start at the top. They normally started at the bottom and came right up through to the top. Of course, I mean, there's always a bit of privilege, and that is a blessing from God, which we will not despise. But at the end of the day, when God gives us something, no matter how small it is, and each of us, no matter how poor we are, has something in us that God has given us. And if you look at, I know I'm coming back to religion, but it's because I believe the religious and the secular are one. God is in all of them. If you look at the parable of the talents, the one who was given 1 talent, he hid it because he was afraid. And God called him a wicked and lazy servant. And I think many of us hide our talents and what we can bring to the table because we are afraid. We are afraid people will laugh at us. We are afraid it will not be good enough. But you see, everything has small beginnings. Look at the Lord Jesus Christ. The guy started with 12 guys. Half the people betrayed him. By the time he was dying, there was only 1 guy standing by him at the cross. If you look at Jesus from a secular perspective, from a corporate perspective, he failed. He started with 12 guys, and there was 1 guy and his mother standing by him at the very end. But what has that grown into today? It is $1 million industry, the faith we serve. So we have to understand that God has shown us the example that nothing is going to be boom, everybody's looking for that breakthrough, but it's many breakthroughs. And then we get to where we are. We get to the point where a multitude are seeing us. But if we start out with the idea that I'm going to sit in my house and I won't move until 1 million people are willing to pay attention to me, when is that going to happen? It happens with one person talking to another person who says, oh, listen to this thing, watch this thing. And that is how each of us build up whatever it is we bring to the table. So Microsoft didn't start out with everybody wanted a Microsoft, neither did Apple. All these things built up bit by bit to where now it seems as if nobody can do without it. But again, it starts small, and each of us, no matter how underprivileged we are, has an opportunity. And of course, there are institutions that help. We run a foundation, Equitas, that helps with that. One of the things we believe in is that every young person should pursue their passion, because to live a life where you don't pursue your passion is misery. And so what we do is we create safe spaces where we say, okay, what do you think you would love to do? And we try and expose you to that place where we find somebody who is succeeding in that career for you to intern with. Now, we may pay you a little bit, but your mindset should be that I am going into a space so I can learn, so I can grow and also become a disciple of somebody else and project what I have and bring my value also to the world.
Since you brought that, let's finish with that one before I move on to my next question. Sure. So, what's the name of that foundation?
Equitas.
Okay.
Equitas Foundation.
That's for you?
Yes.
Okay. And how does one get to join?
To be a part of Equitas, you can send an email to info@equitasfoundation.com, or you can call 054-541-1414. And Abna will pick up the call and she will talk to you about the work that we are doing with the foundation and the various ways in which you can be a part of it.
So any talents, anything that somebody can do, or you have specialized areas?
So what we look for is we particularly try and help underprivileged young people. So people who are really struggling to even get their talents to just come up a bit to the top. And whatever it is that you're interested in, we'll work with the various institutions based on our network. So if you're a footballer, for instance, and you're like, I definitely want to be a footballer, then you should have an expectation that we're going to put you in a football camp for 6 weeks.
Okay.
But that means that you are watching your diet, you are waking up early, you are training, because sometimes the things we think we are passionate about, we just like the glory around it, but we're not really interested in doing the work for it. So if it's banking, if it's medicine, but we really will interview you, talk to you, try and understand, one, what are you truly passionate about, and two, are you willing to do the work? Because it's not a free ride. Yeah. You've got to come in and do the work so that we can help you build up and become who you really should be.
Talking about talents, I mean, there are some people who do believe that I'm very good at what I want to do. You ask the person to send you your content, and then the content is not up to standard. How do you get to convince such a person that, Charlie, this is not your field? I mean, yeah.
So sometimes it's difficult, I understand that, but you also have to let the person understand this is the global level, and this is where you are. So if it's truly your passion, and it may be your passion, then you need to build up to here to be competitive in the rest of the world. And then other times it's through interviews. You talk to the person and try and understand, what is your ideal day like? What would your ideal job look like? And what you may find is that what they describe is actually totally different from what they have said is their passion.
Okay. I'm still here with Reverend Akua Ofori Boateng. Meniaji, I'm very happy and I like how the conversation is going. I know you've also learned a lot from what we are doing. My name is Zionfelix. I'll be right back. Then we continue on.
Download Ladder Driver now. Ladder, your safest ride to your destination. Improve your life with Ladder Driver. Drive Ladder, live better. Download Ladder Driver now. Ladder, we drive you safely.
Zionfelix is still here, and you're also here, I'm sure. Thank you very much for watching. Reverend Akua Ofori Boateng happens to be with the Anglican Church. Which diocese?
I'm with the Anglican Diocese of Accra, and I'm at the Holy Trinity Cathedral.
Okay, what's that?
Hotcast.
Hotcast, that's a high school.
Yes.
Okay.
The church is there. That's a school attached to the church.
Oh, okay.
The Holy Trinity Cathedral High School.
Oh,
Secondary school.
Secondary school.
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at life challenges growing up. I mean, you said when you were in Ghana, almost everything was okay. So you left to the States, where you had to face life, and they had to even cut your hair because of $50. So how was life? What are some of the challenges that you faced, and then how did you overcome it? Because I'm sure there might be somebody also facing such, especially even Ghanaians in the States. Because people do believe that as long as you travel to America, that is it. You're going to make millions, you're going to build 5 houses in Ghana. Of which it is not like that. How was it when you left Ghana for the States?
Okay, so I'll start before I left Ghana. So on the contrary, although no, I didn't have financial challenges, when I was here, I was very insecure. And that's one of the things that a lot of young women struggle with, and even young men. This constant need to be approved by other people, that everybody has to, you want to be cool, you want to be part of the in crowd. So everything that you do, whether you're drinking or smoking or whatever it is you're doing, is based on wanting to be with the in crowd. And I carried that into the US, so I was getting involved in all kinds of things because I felt as if this is what I needed to do to be cool. And what that resulted in was I struggled in school academically because I felt as if, I was going out late, I was hanging out, doing all kinds of untoward things in an effort to fit in. And the result was my grades suffered. And in fact, when I was in Ghana, I had actually repeated one of my classes. And then when I went to the US, I struggled severely with my education and so on. I managed to complete everything, but that time in my life made me see, of course, on hindsight, has made me see that many of our young people today do what they do because other people are doing it. They do what they do because they think that is what will gain them approval. Even to the point of the people they date and the people they marry, it's all based on what society is saying. But when we live our lives like that, again, we miss out on what it is that God has called us to do in this world, because we are no longer looking at who we are in Christ. We are looking at who we are. Somebody says, oh, Zionfelix is very cool, I want to be like Zionfelix. Everything he does in his life is about Zionfelix. So even if God is telling him that I want you to go into medicine, or I want you to go into art, he is lost because he just wants to be Zionfelix. And so many of our young people, especially with the advent of social media, and social media can be a wonderful thing, but social media can also lead many, many people astray, because there are so many influences in our lives now that if we are not grounded in something solid, as in Jesus Christ, then we just go helter-skelter in any direction. And that was where I struggled. I struggled to the point where by the time my choice of partner for marriage was wrong, and I wound up getting divorced. And that is a huge part of my ministry now, is to talk to young people, especially young women, about the decision in marriage, who you choose and why you choose the person you marry, both young men and women. For most priests will tell you that your ministry comes out of your pain. So what you have been through is what you teach other people. You know, like the Lord Jesus Christ, he's the damage to him, overcoming death. That is what he showed to his disciples, that go and teach other people how to love, how to overcome some of these challenges. And many of our young people today are marrying wrong people for the wrong reasons. And so the divorce rate is climbing. I talk to people who send me messages and they say, oh, I'm going through a divorce. I've been married 3 years, 4 years. And you ask yourself, so how can you, I mean, people date longer than that. Yeah. And the marriage, the relationship lasts. So how do you marry somebody 3 years, 4 years, and it falls apart? And it's because the premise of the marriage is wrong. And so we need to talk to our young people.
What should we consider?
We should consider what marriage is and what marriage is for. Marriage is a ministry. It is supposed to show people how Christ and his church interact. Christ and his church are supposed to love each other, forgive each other. They're not supposed to be beating each other and insulting each other and disrespecting each other. Women are supposed to understand what true submission means. Men should understand what submission means, what love actually means. If we look at how Christ loved his church, he sacrificed everything for his church. Are men truly sacrificing for their wives? If you look at the relationship between God and Christ, God sent Christ. Christ was equal to God, but he submitted to God. Do women understand what it takes to submit to their husbands? These are things that we need to disciple young people on. But what happens? We spend all our time discipling young people on, oh, I saw your doctor, I saw your lawyer, I saw your way, and all those things come to an end at age 60. But the one that's supposed to last a lifetime, which is marriage, nobody brings it up until you're in your 20s or 30s. Hey, now you're now married. That is no counsel, you know. And then after you've picked the colors, then we go to a priest and say, oh, we want to marry, so we are coming for marriage counseling. 6 months. You're not interested in marriage counseling. You've chosen your college, you've chosen your date. You are just ticking a box that, oh, we were counseled. But if right from the beginning we are talking to our young people about personalities, about character, about what is good character in men, in women, just like the way we are always asking our young people, oh, what do you want to do in school, and so on and so. Why do we ask these questions? Because you know that at the end of the day, we are heading for a particular career. So from the beginning, we are prepping for it. So if at the end of the day, we know we are heading for a good marriage, why are we not prepping from the beginning? Why do we hide the truths about marriage from young people until they are 6 months to get married, and then we bombard them with a bunch of information, and then when they go, we say, oh, I don't know. You know, I mean, it's like deception. So we should guide young people now, before they choose. So it's not in the marriage that we are now firefighting to prevent people from getting divorced.
Is it advisable for parents to start talking about, relationships, sex issues with their children when they are at a very younger age, 10, 11 going? Because some parents do think that if I start to teach my kid that particular thing, or best strong term, might start engaging myself in such an act. Is it advisable?
Let me ask you, are the children not talking about it now?
They do.
They do, but they are talking about it with their friends who also don't know anything.
Yeah.
So you might as well educate the child properly. Start talking to the child now. Let the child know that sex is normal, but it is not for now. So that the child understands that what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, we can't control biology. We don't start feeling these urges when we are 23 and we're going to get married. We start feeling these urges way earlier. But because no adult is talking to us about it, we start talking to our friends. And then our friends tell us whatever foolishness is going on in their heads because they also don't know. So at the end of the day, you have two blind people leading each other into disaster. But if you call your child aside and you say, look, I know you are feeling this way now, and it is normal, but there's a place and a time for this. And these are the ways you can battle these things. These are the things you'll be exposed to. When you meet them, this is how to handle them. Then you are discipling the person properly. Otherwise, you just left the person to run wild. The wolves eat them up, and then you are surprised.
Taking Reverend Akua, what would you say some of the mistakes that you did prior to your marriage and during the marriage?
Prior to my marriage, I had no idea. I need to cough. Prior to my marriage, I had no idea what to look for in a spouse. I only knew that the person needed to have a good job. Obviously, the person needed to be a man. And that was about it. There was really no particular guidance that I had. During the marriage, one of the fundamental mistakes I made, which I think many of us make, is that men and women are different. We are very different from each other. The way women process and the way men process is miles apart. And there's nothing wrong with it. But it must be acknowledged and recognized, respected, and honored within the marriage. But if you start feeling that your husband must think of things the way you think of it because that's how you think about it, you just frustrate him. And he likewise you also feel like your wife doesn't understand you, your husband is not loving because you are so different. But if you acknowledge that this is how I love, then when you see a certain behavior, you know that, oh, this is not how I would love me, but what he's doing apparently is loving. So now I understand it. Now I can guide him to say, okay, I know you think this is loving. I know coming from you this is loving, but for me this is what would work. Then we are communicating. But otherwise we are just fighting past each other. It's always yelling and screaming. Nobody understands each other. And the next thing is that I don't want to go home because when I go home we are always fighting.
I'm sure, so what you've learned some. How did the boss conversation come in?
So while I was in Ghana, I was in seminary. I had no job, nothing was going on. I was divorced. When I came back from the US, I was divorced, I had one child, no job. Nothing was going on for me. I was in seminary. And I'd come to a point where I felt like, look, I need to work. You know, I'm trained, I have all this education, but I need to work. I had started my own business and I had failed in so many different ways. So I prayed. I said, God, look, I need a job, any company, any industry, I don't care. I just want to be number 1 or number 2 in the company because I'm qualified enough for that. About 6 days later, I got a call from Ernst & Young. And they said, oh, they'd seen my CV somewhere, there's a job at Bost, would I be interested? And I said, well, I don't even know what Bost is. I'd never heard of Bost before. So I looked it up. It was a government institution. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get this job. I mean, number 2 in a company like this, the number 1 is appointed by the government. There's no way I'm going to get this job. So I went for the interview. I finished the interview. It was during World Cup time, so I even went to watch a World Cup game. During the game, I got a call, and it was the MD of Boston. He said, oh, we're hiring for the job. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, it's one of those things where I feel like, for me at that time, it was at a time I had said to God that I would finally go into the priesthood because I'd had a long battle with God about the priesthood. And that's part of when I talk about purpose and talking about finding your ministry and finding your passion. That I also think that because God himself has deposited these gifts in us, when we agree to pursue them, he makes a way for us to ensure that we excel at them in ways that we normally wouldn't excel at them. And that's why sometimes we struggle so much because we are pursuing paths that have not been created for us. Bost for me was an absolutely amazing experience. It was my first time I worked in government. Very different from any of the corporate jobs I'd ever done before. You know, people write memos. You know, it was really, really different for me, having come from the US where, you know, everything is by email and everything is electronic. But I also realized that the Ghanaian worker is very dedicated to their work once the environment is right. And when the environment is wrong, they completely tune out. You know, so working at Boss showed me that Ghanaians are really skilled, very talented, and truly dedicated to their work. But a lot of times, the environment in which we find ourselves is what creates a system where people feel as if they are just going to hold their own and not work, because the system doesn't encourage that type of working. The system doesn't praise people who do well.
How many years did you work there?
I was there for 3 years, I believe. Yeah.
And what course year is it?
I felt as if I had done the work I needed to do there. When I got there, the MD asked me to restructure the company. I had done the restructuring, and I was at a point where I felt as if I really wanted to step into ministry. And I was about to be ordained a priest. I wanted to be able to focus on that and step out on my own and start my own company. So I did that. I left, I started my own company. I started the foundation, I started an engineering firm, and the rest is history. So
now you own an engineering firm?
So I've given it up now. It was a German company that approached me and asked me to be their country manager here. So ILF Consulting Engineers, I set the company up, and we did well. In fact, the company pulled out at the end of the COVID. When COVID started, they actually pulled out of Africa, except for Nigeria. So that's how we let that go.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now the book, Broken for Use.
Broken for Use, yes.
What brought about it?
So, Broken for Use, when I looked back on my life and the struggles I had, especially as a teenager, I realized that I never got to hear anybody who had gone through those struggles talk to me about the fact that, look, you will be fine. These are normal things and ways to get past them. And having gone through that, having gone through a divorce, and now a priest talking to people, advising people, I realized that so many people need to hear this. And I'm only one person. You know, how many places can I go to go and talk about my story, to share my testimony? So I prayed about it and I wrote this book. And this book really is just a long testimony. It's a testimony from the day I turned 8 years old up until I was ordained a priest. And it just tells the story of how, despite some of the difficulties that we go through in life, that we can push through. It's supposed to be encouragement to people. And what I find fascinating is I wrote it for people between their 20s and 30s. Most of the people who give me feedback on it are in their 60s.
Wow.
Yes.
That's nice. That's nice. So how will one get a copy?
So you can get this book on Amazon. You can get it from Book Nook. If you're in Ghana, you can get it from booknook.com. You can get it from Citrus Bookshop. You can get it from Vidya Bookshop. And you can call the foundation number. The book is actually published by the foundation.
Okay.
So the proceeds from the book actually go into the foundation, which we use to help young people to find their purpose. Because that is what it's all about.
Thank you very much. Your last words for my people.
Look, I think life is such that God has deposited something in each of us. And He wants us to use that thing to add value to His kingdom. And most of us are struggling because we can't find what it is. And so I am here, as well as this foundation, to encourage you that whatever it is that God has deposited in you is something that can come out and can add value to the world and add value to you yourself. So my prayer is that reach out to me, get a copy of this book, read it, and believe in yourself that who you are and what God has made you is something that the world needs to hear about. So I encourage you to put yourself out there and let people see how special you truly are.
Today, Zionfelix talked to a mechanical engineer, an Anglican priest, and a powerful woman who has been an advisor to the ex-president of America and is still an advisor to the current president of the United States of America, Rev Akua Ofori. My name is Zionfelix. Thank you very much, and I'm sure you've learned a lot. Everybody, I mean, we talked about parents, how parents can also benefit from her, how with the kids, marriage, Christianity. All them can't call you, can't say me because some more. I'll come back again and talk to you on other issues because you're here. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.